Wow, it's been a while, right? I've just been doing so much in this month. It's crazy. Like, I'm currently like going to loads of auditions for dance schools because apparently that's what I decided to do now. And I've just been like planning my mom's birthday party thing, and just been so much going on, and I have loads of dance performances and everything. So like I haven't been able to film, and I probably won't be able to film like max 4 videos, I guess, in the upcoming 2 months because it's just like so intense. We'll see if I'll continue with YouTube, but for now, let's talk about the books that I read this month. So I read 7 books and 1 comic this month. And the beginning of the month I had a readathon with my mom with 3 days we just read. So I managed to read 1 book a day, which was really, really good. I really needed that. And so the first book I read this month was To Kill a Kingdom by Alexander Christo. I believe this actually was published last month or the month before. This is a very like classic YA fantasy, you know, and I'm sort of tired of YA fantasy in general. I feel like I'm just like, it's sort of the same thing again and again and again, the same issues, the same like personalities and everything, but this one's a little bit refreshing because it's a fantasy. I got the feeling it's the Little Mermaid retelling. It's about this princess called Lyra, and she is a siren, which is basically like these mermaids sort of thing that live in the ocean, and her mom is the queen, and she looks like octopus, and she looks kind of like a fish on the bottom, you know, if you know what I mean. So that's where I kind of got the, you know, the Little Mermaid thing going on. Not that the Little Mermaid has a mom that's an octopus, she doesn't, but like the evil one, and her mom is evil, and she's made her kill 1 prince for every birthday she's had and taken a heart, because it's kind of like a tradition to take princess hearts, not princesses hearts, but princess hearts, sons of kings hearts. And these are all supposed to be human, and humans and sirens do not get along, and humans hunt sirens and sirens hunt humans. And so one day when Lyra disappoints her mom, she's turned into a human, and so the story begins where she meets a siren hunter, and in the beginning you kind of get the impression that she's sort of evil, Lyra, but it turns out that she's kind of been manipulated by her mom throughout her whole life, and she's trying to find, you know, like the kindness within her again. And I felt like she was going to be this like badass, so she is a really badass character, and it was really fun to see the kingdoms and everything. Something this book actually really, really needed, I felt, was like a map. It doesn't have a map in the beginning, and it would have like helped this book quite a bit. And all in all, I gave it 4 stars and I enjoyed it, but I don't think I would recommend it. Next, I read I Am Groot by Christopher Hastings. This is like, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I've seen those 2 movies so many times. I think they're so good. I love them so much. And Groot is, of course, one of my favorite characters, and I wanted to buy a comic to see like if the story continues or whatever, and I thought this was really fun. It's sort of like a mind twister, the story, the plot, and it's basically about like Groot, who leaves the Guardians of the Galaxy, and he enters this sort of like loophole and goes into another world, and then it's about him trying to get back, you know, to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then like loads of things happen in between. It's really fun and playful, and I think the artwork is quite good. It's a little bit like sketchy in a way, and I thought it was just so great, and Groot's like expressions are just like so good. And there was one picture of Groot in here, which is this one. And what's so good about this one is like he's getting like trapped with like all these booby traps behind him, and he's just like chasing this butterfly, which is so Groot, and I love it so much. I gave this first 5 stars, and then I was like, okay, but it's not my favorite comic, and then I gave it 4 stars. I still really enjoy it, and I would recommend it. Next, I read So Long and Thanks for All the Fish by Douglas Adams. This is the 4th book in the trilogy of 5, and I love this series. I think it's like super intelligent, and I love the way it's written and everything, but this book unfortunately disappointed me. In the last book, there were so many things happening and so many great metaphors and everything, and so I kind of expected a lot from this. This was just sort of like a missed situation, because in this book, the planet never did blow up as it does in like the first chapter or something in the first book. In this book, they come back to Earth and it never blew up at all. and it's just sort of weird what happens at Earth. It doesn't really make any sense. There isn't really like a storyline, and maybe I just wasn't like into it. I don't know, like of course there's some funny parts. I mean, it's like a hilarious book, but I just felt like, I don't know, it was just not like the best one. I usually give it 5 stars and I actually gave this 3 stars. Next, I read The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. I read this book this month because her other book, Something the Occult, came out this month, and I bought that as well and I wanted to read it. So before I read that, I wanted to read her first book because everyone says that this is like one of their favorite books. They really, really like it, and so I had to read it. It's a book following 3 or 4 generations, and the last one in the generation is Ava Lavender, and you get to follow her mom, her grandma, and kind of even her great-grandma as they come from France and move to the US, and kind of death that follows and what love does to each member of the family. It's sort of like magical realism because Ava Lavender herself was born with wings, and you get to like sort of understand why why she was born with wings, but it's sort of like implied in a way. So this book has loads of like layers and layers of metaphors, and there's so much meaning behind, you know, all the different love that are encountered throughout the story. Unfortunately, it's a very, very, very sad tale, and it was so heartbreaking. Like, after I read this book, I was crying for like days afterwards. Like, I would just think of the book and I would just like burst out crying for no reason. Like, it was just, I felt like, why did I have to go that way in the end, you know? But it was just, it made an impact, and I think this was a book that everyone can read and that everyone should read. And it's definitely not written like a young adult story, even though it is, which I really liked. It is like a little bit slow, but once you understand why it's slow, it's like you just enjoy it. So yeah, I highly recommend this book. Next, I read The Beast Player by Nahako Uwaheshi. This is a Japanese fantasy, so it's translated from Japanese to English, which it recently was in the last month or something. And this is a very cool Japanese tale. Like, it seems like it's sort of based upon a Japanese folklore. And so in this book, there's like 2 kinds of beast. There are these like flying furish beasts, and then there are like these serpent-ish beasts called the Toda. And so the main character, she comes from a clan, kind of a family that's grown up being able to control the Toda in a way. And her mother was kicked out of that clan because she married someone else outside of it. And so at the beginning of the book, her mother is killed because she let loads of Toda die, and Toda is kind of like a weapon used in the story, used in armies to fight, you know, other countries and stuff like that. And so the main character in the beginning, she flees from her mother that's recently been killed, and she ends up at this bee farm where she grows up with this lone farmer who farms bees. And so the story begins sort of. This was a very unique book. When you read books from authors that aren't actually writing it in English, when it's translated, it feels a little bit different because it's like, because they don't use the same structure when they write and how the story is built up. But I really liked the story and how it was like the connection between human and beast, and how humans and animals are so connected and we don't really like appreciate that enough. And the main character, she has a great relationship with one of the beasts, and it's just so lovely to see, and I love that aspect of the story. So you get to follow the main character as she grows up of many years. But what I didn't like about this book is kind of how it wrapped up, the where it started and how it like ended. I think it was very as a very nice like concept and plot, but I don't think it was executed that well, because like the main character had sort of like a plan that we didn't know about, and I never read a book where, you know, the book knows more about the story than you do. Usually it's the reader that knows more than the characters, but it wasn't like that in this book, and I sort of liked it, sort of not. I'm not really sure even. And also like the politics in the end, I was not really following, which sucked, but I sort of grasped it, but then I was like, oh, slip it away, you know? But I actually did really enjoy this book, so I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read another Japanese book, actually. This is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. So He read Kafka on the Shore, which I really, really liked. I read it in January, I think. I just loved it so much, and this is another very famous novel by him. This one is completely different and has like no magic in it whatsoever. So in this story, you basically follow this main character called Watanabe, and he's just like a normal, regular kind of kid. He has two friends, and one of them like commits suicide, and then his friend's girlfriend kind of goes insane and she becomes really depressed, and it's sort of like his relationship to her after this event happens, but it's also his relationship to people in his school, his roommate, to other girls. Doesn't really have like a line of plot that it follows. It's very very unique and very enjoyable. I also gave this 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much. I thought it was so well written. I think there's so much like everyone commits suicide in this book, and I don't know if it's like a Japanese thing or not, but it was just like very prominent, and it was so many great reflections on like relationships and your place in the world. And it was really good. It was also like my book club book that I both read with my dad and the book club, and it was just such a joy to discuss it. They have some really strong characters and some really great themes, and I highly recommended this book. I thought it was really good. But just so you know, before I get into the book, there's like a lot of sex scenes in it, but it's definitely not like unnecessary. It's very like reflective, and it makes total sense to the plot, and it sort of enriches the story in a way. It makes it very different, and I really like this book. Next, I read Oathbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archives, and it's fucking huge. Like, alright guys, this took me like more than 2 weeks to finish. It's 1,200 pages, and I was like, it's a really good book, okay? But I didn't give it 5 stars like the other 2 series. This is like an epic fantasy, and it's very complicated. And the people in the story don't really know how their own world works and their magic system and everything. They're always discovering and exploring things, so the person reading the book is kind of learning with the characters, and some characters know more than others, and so you get to follow like loads of points of views in the story over loads of different lands and everything. And while the other 2 books was exploring a lot of the magic, this one you got to live through the magic, so there was a lot of magic in this one compared to the other 2 books. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the book, but I felt like it was a little bit rushed, especially in the end. I felt like they could have explained it more. I'm not going to go through the plot of this book because it's so completely complicated, and if you want to like look it up, then go and look it up. I do recommend the series as a whole if you want a challenge, because it's definitely a challenge. But it's so worth it. Like, when you get into it, you get like, it's just like you live another life. Like, it's another level of reading. I love this book, but because I was a little disappointed, I gave it 1 star lower than the others. Also, actually, I just wanted to mention this. I bought this book, which is the Arcanum Unbound, the Cosmere collection by Brandon Sanderson. So in this book, I think there's like stories from his Cosmere universe where all of his books basically take place. But it also has some short stories. So when I started reading the credits or something, the acknowledgements in the beginning of Oathbreaker, it said that if you haven't read like the short novella story Edge Dancer, you can do that before you read this one, because it's gonna like enhance your experience of Oathbreaker. And so it said that I could find it in this, and so I bought this, and I actually read Edge Dancer, so it's like a 100-page novella kind of thing, and it's so good because this is about a really great funny character from that we actually met in the previous book, the Words of Radiance. And this book, this novella is like 100% about her, and I enjoy this so much. Unfortunately, I haven't put it on Goodreads, because if you buy this as a separate book, it has like more than 100 additional pages, and I don't want to seem like I read 200 pages when I've actually just read like 100 or something. And I do highly recommend that you do read that novella before you do read Oathbreaker if you're thinking about reading the series. And lastly, I read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I've had this on my bookshelf for a while, and now that the movie's out, I had to read it. And I enjoyed this so much. This was so good. I gave it 5 stars. And so you're basically following, it's like a futuristic sci-fi or like a dystopian in a way. It's a society where climate change and everything has just hit Earth and it's like a disaster, and so everyone lives in this virtual reality called the Oasis. And inside the Oasis there is this game that was created by the creator of the Oasis when he died. And in the game, there's like loads of planets and fandoms, and you can travel to like basically any planet with any fandoms, and there are loads of games, and like it's just insane how it's built up on like 80s pop culture in a way. And it's just so many references, and I think that was really, really cool. I'm not like a big 80s nerd, so like I don't know everything, and I wish that I'd gotten like a list of all the references in the book, and then I just like watched all those series before, read all those books. But when like I did know something, like they were mentioning like a Kurt Vonnegut book, that I would be like, I know what they're talking about. So sometimes when I got like the references, it was so much fun, but most of the time I didn't, which was unfortunate, but I still really loved it. Something that I did really, really love about this book is that it's kind of like a hunt for like this Easter egg, or like this egg, you know? And so you have to pick up these clues, and he's going on like a journey to win this prize, which was so, so great, because I kept thinking like, oh, he's gonna run into some obstacles, like something's gonna go wrong, but it's one of those stories where like everything he does just flows so great, and like he manages to do all that he wants to do. It was like adventure story. You know, when I'm reading books, I'm just so tired of all like the conflict, like oh the main character tries to do this and he couldn't, and it like constantly they go through obstacles. This was just like a flowy journey, so it was such an enjoyable read. If you want something that just makes you really happy and you sit on the edge of the seat and you can't put like the book down, I highly recommend this book. This is probably the best sci-fi-ish book I've read so far. I'm not a big fan of sci-fi actually, but I really, really enjoyed this and I highly recommend it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you got some good book recommendations. I read a lot of good books this month actually. So comment below what books you read this month, or if you read any of these, then tell me your thoughts on them. So I hope you guys all have a really, really lovely day and a lovely reading month. I will see you guys soon, hopefully. Soon enough. Bye bye.